What if I told you that sharks, the ocean's most feared predators, are older than trees? And that's not just a clickbait headline. It's a mind-blowing scientific fact. Long before the first tree ever spread its roots across dry land, sharks were already swimming through ancient oceans. In fact, fossil records show sharks have been around for at least 450 million years, while the very first true trees didn't appear until about 385 million years ago. That means sharks had already lived, hunted, and survived in Earth's seas for over 60 million years before a single tree shaded the land. Think about that. These creatures, often thought of as modern monsters, have existed since before leaves, bark, or forests ever evolved. And that's just the beginning of their story, because what follows is a tale of survival, extinction, climate chaos, and incredible evolution. Sharks didn't just come before trees. They've outlived entire ecosystems, survived global catastrophes, and watched the continents reshape while they kept swimming. So, how did sharks get such a head start? And how have they managed to stay alive this long? Let's go back in time, way back, to a planet almost unrecognizable, and meet that ancient world of the shark. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine Earth 420 million years ago. There are no forests, no flowers, no birds singing in the trees, because there are no trees at all. The land is mostly empty, just rocky deserts and small patches of moss hugging damp ground near the coasts. The air feels thick and heavy with carbon dioxide, almost unbreathable for us. But below the surface of the ocean, life is exploding. This is the Devonian period, often called the Age of Fishes. The seas are alive with strange, armored fish, ancient corals, and jawless creatures drifting through warm, shallow waters. And somewhere in these primeval oceans, evolution is quietly shaping a new kind of hunter. A creature with cartilage instead of bones, a flexible body built for speed, and teeth, rows and rows of teeth that could grow back forever. These were the earliest shark ancestors, the silent predators that would soon dominate the seas for hundreds of millions of years. Meanwhile, on land, evolution was just getting started. The first tiny plants, little more than mosses and liverworts, had only recently begun creeping across the edges of the continents. But trees, they were still a long way off. In this ocean-dominated planet, sharks ruled long before forests even dreamed of existing. And it's in these waters that the first true sharks would rise. The story of sharks begins not with giants, but with whispers. Tiny fragments of fossilized skin and scales buried deep in ancient rock. Paleontologists have found these microscopic clues dating back around 450 million years, a time when life was still experimenting with form and survival. These were the first shark-like creatures, small and primitive, but they carried the blueprints of a legend. Fast forward to the early Devonian period, about 410 million years ago, and something remarkable happens. In the oceans, a new predator appears, Doliotis problematicus, the oldest known shark fossil with both teeth and fins. It looked strange by today's standards, part bony fish, part shark, but it marked a turning point. Nature was testing a new design, one that would last longer than dinosaurs, mammals, and maybe even humanity itself. Then came the late Devonian period, roughly 380 million years ago, and the ocean's top predator took a familiar shape. Meet Cladocelesce, sleek, fast, and terrifyingly efficient. About 6 feet long, this ancient shark had smooth skin, a torpedo-shaped body, and sharp, replaceable teeth. It could dart through the water with deadly precision, a perfect hunter,
millions of years before trees spread across the land. For millions of years, sharks thrived in this watery world. They learned to adapt, to hunt smarter, swim faster, and sense the faintest vibration in the ocean. Their cartilage skeletons made them light and quick, while their rows of regenerating teeth made them eternal predators. By the time trees began to appear on land, sharks had already perfected the art of survival. They were the ocean's original engineers, and they were just getting started.
As the Devonian seas flourished, sharks didn't just survive, they conquered. They became the undisputed rulers of Earth's oceans, evolving into an astonishing variety of shapes and sizes. Welcome to the Carboniferous period, about 359 million years ago, a time paleontologists often call the Golden Age of Sharks. Imagine it, the seas swarming with strange shark species, each more bizarre than the last. Some had flat, wing-like fins, others saw-like snouts. There was Stethecanthus, the anvil shark, with a strange ironing board-shaped fin on its back, possibly used for display or combat. And then there was Helicoprion, a shark with a spiral jaw, a literal buzzsaw of teeth coiled inside its mouth. These creatures weren't mistakes of evolution. They were experiments. Nature was playing, adapting, testing the boundaries of survival. And sharks kept winning. But the real proof of their strength, they survived everything the planet threw at them. Mass extinctions wiped out most life, including 96% of marine species during the Permian extinction, the deadliest event in Earth's history. Yet sharks endured. They adapted through ice ages, meteor strikes, and shifting continents. When dinosaurs appeared, sharks were already ancient. When dinosaurs vanished, sharks remained. Over 450 million years, they've watched Earth change beyond recognition, and they've evolved through it all. From the armored seas of the Devonian to today's coral reefs, their design has barely needed improvement. Because when nature creates near perfection, it doesn't need to start over. While sharks ruled the oceans, something quiet was happening above the waves. A different kind of life, fragile and green, was beginning its own revolution. Around 470 million years ago, before even the first true sharks, simple plants started to appear along the edges of continents. They were nothing like the trees we know today. No leaves, no roots, no wood. Just small, moss-like forms clinging to wet ground, drinking in sunlight and slowly learning how to survive outside the ocean. For millions of years, these pioneers battled impossible odds. Dry air, harsh sunlight, and a landscape with no real soil. The land back then was barren, mostly rock and sand, and every step forward for plant life was a monumental victory. But evolution is patient. Over time, some plants developed stems strong enough to stand upright and primitive vascular systems to carry water within their bodies. These innovations allowed them to grow taller, spread wider, and breathe new life into the continents. Still, Earth's surface remained mostly flat and empty. No towering canopies, no shade, no rustle of leaves in the wind. Just a few inches of green pushing through mud. While sharks ruled the oceans, the land was still learning to breathe. And it would take millions more years and a few incredible evolutionary leaps before the first true trees would rise and transform the planet forever. Then, after millions of years of quiet struggle, something extraordinary happened. From the shallow soils of a still young Earth, the first trees began to rise. It was around 385 million years ago, deep in the Middle Devonian period,
when a plant called Archaeopteris changed everything. It didn't look quite like modern trees. It had fern-like leaves, reproduced by spores instead of seeds, but it had one revolutionary feature: wood. This was the first plant strong enough to defy gravity. Its woody trunk stood tall against the wind, its branches reached for sunlight, and its deep roots anchored it firmly in the ground. For the first time, Earth had forests. These early forests appeared in places like what's now Cairo, New York, where scientists discovered fossilized roots from 385 million years ago, the remains of some of the oldest trees ever found. And with those roots came change. Trees transformed everything. They broke down rocks to make soil, stabilized riverbanks, and released oxygen that reshaped the atmosphere. They cooled the planet, provided habitats, and began a new age of life on land. But here's the incredible part. By the time these first forests spread across the continents, sharks had already been swimming for nearly 70 million years. The oceans had their rulers long before the land found its own. While trees were just learning to stand, sharks had already perfected motion. Two kingdoms, one of waves, one of wood, both ancient, but not equally old.
Now, let's lay it all out, side by side. The timeline of life, written across hundreds of millions of years. 450 million years ago, the first shark-like creatures appear in the oceans. Tiny, scale-covered hunters gliding through prehistoric seas when land was nearly empty. 410 million years ago, sharks like Doliotis emerge, showing off early fins and true teeth, the blueprint for every shark to come. 385 million years ago, Archaeopteris rises, the first true trees, lifting green life toward the sky for the very first time. Do the math. Sharks had already been here for nearly 65 million years before a single tree took root. That's longer than the time between dinosaurs and us today. Just imagine it. For tens of millions of years, Earth's surface was bare, while beneath the waves, sharks had already built entire food chains. They hunted, evolved, survived in a world that had no forests, no flowers, no birds, only oceans and sky. When you look at a shark today, you're looking at a survivor from a time before wood, before leaves, before shade ever existed. It's like finding a living time machine, a creature that remembers a world where land was silent and the oceans ruled everything.
So why did sharks come before trees? Why did the oceans evolve such complex life long before the land even turned green? The answer lies in Earth's early conditions and in how life itself began. Billions of years ago, the oceans were the cradle of creation. Water protected life from the sun's deadly radiation, provided minerals, and carried the chemistry needed for evolution to experiment. It was a safe haven, a natural laboratory where complex organisms could grow, move, and adapt. By the time the first sharks appeared, the oceans had already gone through a biological revolution. Corals, fish, and invertebrates had built thriving ecosystems. The ocean was ready for predators, and evolution delivered. But the land, that was a different story. The early continents were harsh and unstable. The air was thick with carbon dioxide, 3 to 5 times higher than today. There was no rich soil, no stable food chains, and ultraviolet radiation scorched the ground. Simply put, the land wasn't ready for trees. It took millions of years for plants to slowly change that, to build soil, trap carbon, and cool the climate. Only then could tall trees take root and forests rise. Sharks, on the other hand, didn't need to wait. The ocean had already paved the way. Their environment was alive, evolving, and full of opportunity. And sharks seized it, mastering hunting, speed, and survival long before any creature ever rustled a leaf on land. That's why sharks came first, not by luck, but by timing. They were born in the perfect world for evolution's earliest apex predators.
Today, when you see a shark gliding through the ocean, smooth, silent, and unbothered, you're not just looking at a predator, you're looking at a survivor of deep time. Modern sharks, like the six-gill shark, can trace their lineage back nearly 200 million years. That's before the first mammals even appeared. The great whites, hammerheads, and tiber sharks that roam our oceans today, they're just the latest chapters in a story that began 500 million years ago. In that time, they've watched continents drift apart, mountains rise and fall, and species appear only to vanish again. They've survived 5 mass extinctions, the same cataclysms that wiped out nearly everything else on Earth. While countless species fell, sharks adapted. When the seas grew acidic, they evolved new teeth. When prey disappeared, they learned to hunt differently. They've seen it all, and they're still here. Now, contrast that with trees. The oldest lineages of modern trees, like oaks, pines, or flowering trees, are young by comparison. Most of them appeared only in the last 130 million years. To a shark, that's like yesterday. So when people call sharks living fossils, they're not exaggerating. They are ancient blueprints of survival, reminders of Earth's earliest ages. Each one carries a legacy older than forests, older than birds, even older than the mountains we walk upon. And when a shark cuts through the deep blue today, it's not just moving through water, it's moving through history.
Long before the first forests reached for the sunlight, before leaves danced in the wind, there were sharks, silent travelers in a blue world that never knew trees. They've seen Earth transform from barren wastelands to lush green jungles. They've survived 5 mass extinctions, each capable of wiping out most life on the planet. And yet, they still glide beneath the waves, their form almost unchanged, as if time itself respects them. Why? Because nature perfected their design long ago. Every tooth, every muscle, every sense, crafted for survival, refined over 450 million years. While species rose and fell, sharks simply endured. They are living proof that evolution doesn't always mean change. Sometimes it means mastery. So the next time you see a shark, in a documentary, a museum, or even the ocean, remember, you're not just looking at a predator. You're looking at a piece of prehistory, a survivor older than trees, older than dinosaurs, and perhaps a symbol of what it truly means to adapt and endure. Because in the endless timeline of Earth, sharks aren't just creatures of the deep. They are guardians of time itself.